Hello and happy Tuesday, which is of course my book reviews day, and today I want to talk to you about Titus Groan by Mervyn Peake. Now this particular edition is the limited edition from Folio Society, which is long sold out, but it is available in a standard edition from Folio Society with the same contents here. I did do an unboxing video of the whole set of this trilogy if you wanted to check that out. Otherwise, I'm just going to talk about Titus Groan here while showcasing this particular edition with the stunning artwork by Dave McKean. What can be said about Titus Groan? It is probably one of the most interesting novels I've read in some time, to say the least. I don't think I've ever read anything where the author has had quite a unique voice as Mervyn Peake. He's the type of author who I can understand being a love it or hate it author. I was not shocked to learn through the introduction of this edition by Neil Gaiman that Peake was an artist first and foremost. And you can definitely see that with his words. I mean, the man is painting pictures with his words. So if you're not familiar, the Gormenghast trilogy, starting with Titus Groan, the first novel here, takes place, or at least the first two novels, take place within the castle of Gormenghast. It is both a castle and a town and a world all its own. Those who live within Gormenghast don't need anything outside of Gormenghast. There's a hierarchy to Gormenghast, a formality to everyone having their own roles, their own duties. Whether you be the kitchen boys, such as Steerpike, who's a young Machiavellian spirit who's fighting his ways out of the kitchen under the tutelage of Swelter and starts rising in the ranks in his quest for power in Gormenghast, to Mr. Flay, the head servant of the castle, who is keeping a watchful eye on the day-to-day operations, making sure everything is going as perfectly as it can. Of course, there is the Earl of Gormenghast, who is in charge of everything. Good old Sepulcrave, which, if you think these names sound absolutely ridiculous, they are. It feels like a purely British fashion. Feels almost like as silly as the names of Charles Dickens characters. But anyways, Titus Groan, the first novel in the Gormenghast trilogy, is named after the newly born son to Sepulcrave, Titus Groan. Now, he is not going to be a player in this novel whatsoever. He is very much a baby up to about a 1-year-old at the end of the novel. No, this first novel is primarily about Steerpike, the young man who is fighting his way through the ranks, trying to find his way to a better life of power within Gormenghast. But along the way, you are going to be introduced to an absolute plethora of unique and bizarre characters. We have Gertrude here. We have the Countess Gertrude, who is pretty much in a world of her own, wants nothing to do with those around her, likes to spend her time with her cats and the wild birds. Sepulcrave, who spends his time around just the library, around the books. He's the Earl. He doesn't want anything to do with, anything beyond the duty. To their daughter Fuchsia, who dreams of much more. So, honestly, the biggest word of advice I can give you to anyone who wants to read Titus Groan or read the Gormenghast trilogy is to go read excerpts first and foremost, because it's hard to talk about Gormenghast, hard to talk about Titus Groan without talking about Mervyn Peake's writing style. The man has an interesting way of words. Following the gradual decline of a scarred green that sloped from the arch in the wall and petered out into the dust upon which the hovels were built, she saw suddenly, on raising her eyes from the path, one of these cactus trees. It's a very formalized writing style. It almost comes across as like dry, very dry, but like some of the best wines, you're going to get absolute magic out of that dryness. It's like he's very much a love it or hate it writer with his style. If you love his style, like I did, I was completely enamored by the style. You are going to be in for one hell of a ride with Titus Groan. By all means, to those who hate it, this is going to be a boring novel. It's a novel of everyday life. It's a novel of a massive castle-like city and the workings within. Pictured here, you have Cora and Clarice, the two sisters of Sepulcrave, who cross paths with Steerpike in his quest for power. It is I don't want to say silly kind of undermines it, but it is a whimsical world, a strange world. It's constantly described as being fantasy, and in a way it is fantasy because it's by no means a world of our own. But this isn't your high fantasy. There's no magic within these walls. It's just the magic within the words. I mean, it is certainly a fantastic and bizarre world that is set forth by Mervyn Peake, but it is by no means one of high fantasy. I actually just finished Gormenghast, the second novel, and I can confirm that continues on within the second novel as well. I have to read Titus Alone still, the third novel, which I'm going to do now, which I'm going to start right after, this upcoming week. I have another book that I'm finishing right now. And I guess there are a little bit more strange elements within Titus Alone that might not necessarily be present within Titus Groan and Gormenghast. So don't go in expecting high fantasy. Go in expecting Gothic fantasy, because it is very Gothic. It's a very dry writing style, but it's one of those things where you're going to love it or hate it. You are going to either be completely enamored like I was and not want to put the book down, kind of go from image to image as Mervyn Peake paints with his words and completely brings you into the world of Gormenghast. Or you're going to hate it, find it the most boring novel in the world. I mean, both are fair game. It's not really a fair comparison, but I couldn't help but kind of feel like the writing style was similar to a degree to Karl Ove Knausgaard, who is a Swedish writer who did the My Struggle series, which is a huge 6-book series. That is very much in the real world, whereas this is Gothic, like I said, Gothic fantasy. I mean, the writing styles are very different. They're both painting very different pictures with the words. But as far as the love it or hate it relationship that someone might have with it, that is the best thing I could think of. I mean, Knausgaard in the My Struggle series is very much writing about the mundanity of life. He's literally, his struggle is him writing the book. It's 6 books of him exploring his life and trying to write the novel, which sounds like the most boring thing in the world, but in the hands of a superb author, you're able to be completely enamored and just hypnotized by the words on the page. And I feel like that's almost the same way with Mervyn Peake here. Although obviously Peake sadly passed away decades before Knausgaard even started writing. Knausgaard, I don't know, Knausgaard probably wasn't even born. I don't know when Knausgaard was born, but he probably had passed prior to that. I believe Peake passed in 1967. I don't know when Knausgaard was born, but, Anyways, cats as missiles. Steerpike have to remember that. Seriously, it is a bizarre novel, a bizarre world that is painted by Mervyn Peake, but it is a fascinating one that is worth checking out. And you don't need to spring for a fancy edition like this Folio Society edition. As I mentioned, this is the limited edition, which was numbered, completely sold out. There is a trade edition that Folio Society did, which is going to have all of the same glorious illustrations by Dave McKean, which I think work exceptionally well, but you can find trade copies wherever books are sold. But before you even go out and buy a copy, I would highly recommend you read a couple passages from this novel just to make sure that you are going to be one to appreciate Mervyn Peake's style. If you are looking for a fancy edition, then these Folio Society editions are probably going to be the ones to go with without breaking the bank. This is actually the second edition, I believe, that Folio Society has done. They did one a few years or a few decades ago with different illustrations. I can't speak for that edition, but I gotta say, I think Dave McKean really knocks it out of the park. If you have, money to burn, the ultimate fanciest edition is going to be the Suntup edition, which is completely out of print already. It's not in print yet. It's not in the wild yet, and it's already out of print. That thing is going to be exquisite. All 3 volumes printed complete letterpress. I believe it's J. Johnstone's artwork in there. It's not going to be quite as illustrious artwork-wise as Dave McKean's artwork, but it still works exceptionally well within its own world. Johnstone is going with a more medieval tapestry look for his artwork, which really complements the fine bindings of the Suntup edition. I will say I do prefer the more numerous illustrations that McKean did, but I would say Johnstone's work well for that edition. If you want to eventually see that edition, be sure to subscribe to this channel, because I do have that on order, because, man, I could not pass up the fine press with a capital F edition of this trilogy. And that's having only read the first 2 novels. So anyways, thank you guys very much for watching. I do at least 1 book review a week on Tuesdays, with plenty of unboxing videos in between here and there. The Gormenghast video will be coming up shortly as well, where I will showcase that Folio Society edition. As I mentioned, there is a full video showing all 3 editions at once when I did the unboxing a few years back, but I figured talking about the novel itself and giving you an actual page-by-page flippant journey through these volumes might be a little more beneficial as well for any interested parties. One other thing to say, Neil Gaiman's introduction is pretty good. It mostly focuses on the life of Mervyn Peake, which is very fascinating. I didn't realize how tragic it was. I mean, the third novel was not really cut short per se, but never quite lived up to its potential due to the mental decline and the Alzheimer's dementia that Mervyn Peake suffered at a very young age. He was only 57, I believe, when he passed, which is truly tragic. It's kind of a bummer to have read it as an introduction, because it does spoil some aspects of Titus Alone, the 3rd volume, when I haven't actually read it yet, which is kind of a bummer. But given that the novel is over 60 years old. Actually, I should say Titus Alone I don't think is 60 yet, but it's close to. I can't say that it's, necessarily a new spoiler for a novel so, decades old. But anyways, thank you guys very much for watching. Check out the Gormenghast trilogy if you can. Be sure to read some excerpts of it. Check out the Folio Society edition, or like I said, if you have some money to burn, you can check out the Suntup edition, which is going to be the be-all, end-all edition of Gormenghast. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you around next time.